everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel once again. Thank God for pre-filming is all I can say, because this past week I have been super sick with a springtime cold, and if I had not been able to pre-film videos, you wouldn't have gotten any from me at all last week. So again, apologies if my voice is a little creaky and croaky. I'm still kind of recovering from that. But today I am going to be doing the 25 Bookish Facts About Me tag. That was my dog's tail. Hi Lily, say hello to the people. Start it. So the first bookish fact about me is that I have always been a reader. I started reading when I was around 3 years old. I don't really remember learning how to read. All I know is one day my mom realized that I wasn't repeating the book back to her because I had memorized it. I was actually reading it back to her, and yeah, the rest is history. The second fact is that the first book I ever read was a little golden book called The New Baby, about a young boy named Mike who, you guessed it, is welcoming a new baby sibling into his family. Number 3, my favorite genre right now is science fiction and fantasy. Number 4, I read really, really fast and a lot. I mean, I read 100 plus books a year. I tend to not talk about the volume I read too much on BookTube because I don't know, I think that especially with internet book loving, there's kind of a problem with the need to be competitive and the need to read a lot, whereas I'm trying more and more to focus on the quality of books that I read. That being said, I do read them really quickly, and since reading is basically my main hobby, pastime, or whatever, I get through a lot of books every year. Number 5, I prefer paper copies of books to ebooks or audiobooks. I do like ebooks and audiobooks. I think that they serve a really important purpose, but my personal preference lies with paper copies. Number 6, my favorite classic book is Jane Eyre, closely followed by number 7, my favorite contemporary, which is Mr. Penumbra's 24-hour bookstore. Number 8, I only really got into reading YA in the last year and a half or so. That was mostly because of my friend Dahlia, who actually introduced me to just how fun the genre can be. Prior to that, I had read your typical things that are considered YA classics now, like the Hunger Games, the Harry Potter series, the Divergent series, but I was also coming of age around the time that the Twilight series was really big, and I had no interest in it. I thought a lot of YA was like that. Most of the YA that I was reading at the time that, well-meaning librarians would put into my hands just didn't really jive with me very well. So it actually wasn't until I was firmly an adult that I started reading YA, and mostly because that's where the queer fluffy stuff is. I cannot for the life of me find it in adult fiction books. And also, I think it was just easier for me personally to read about younger protagonists when I wasn't in the middle of things like high school. Myself became a lot easier to read about as an adult. Okay. The genre I'm least familiar with is romance. I guess I should clarify, adult romance is what I'm talking about. I guess I've read a couple of those. I had a teacher that kind of got me into some gothic romance when I was maybe in middle school or something like that, because I was really into gothic literature, so she gave me some more modern interpretations of that genre, but it's the one that I'm least familiar with, I read the least of, and I know the least about, so giant gap in my book knowledge there. Number 10, a lot of my reading is comic books, most of which don't even show up on Goodreads. I track the graphic novel bind-ups of comics that I read, but I don't track single issues. Mostly because, to me, reading a single issue of a comic is like reading a chapter of a book. You wouldn't track each chapter that you read individually, but you would track the whole entire book when you finish it. So eventually, when the single issue comics that I read get published as trades, I'm gonna mark them as read as trades, but right now, it's just too much to keep track of. Maybe eventually I will do a video about the ongoing series that have not been made into trades yet that I'm reading, so stay tuned for that one. Okay, the hardest book I've ever read, which for me was the most difficult, hardest to get through, difficult to parse, was The Castle by Franz Kafka. This one regularly makes the list of books that are the hardest to read, or books that people pretend that they've read to sound impressive, but nobody's really finished it. I finished it. I did have to read it for a class in college. It was my reading literature through science class. And I remember feeling so pissed off at the book when I got to the end, because the book literally just cuts off mid-sentence with no resolution of the entire climax that the book has been building to for the past almost 300 pages of book. And I remember just yelling, "What?" in the middle of my dorm room, really upset that the book just cut off. I later realized that that was because Franz Kafka had kind of left the draft alone, and he literally died before he could finish writing it. Still not over that. Still not over that level of hurt. Okay, number 12. I actually got into reading nonfiction in kind of a weird roundabout way. It was through the PSAT. The PSAT is a sort of standardized test that everybody takes in their junior year of high school, which is 11th grade in the United States. And the PSAT is kind of like an indicator of what colleges you might be able to get into, and I guess your level of like scholarships or funding for going to those colleges. There's something called the National Merit Scholarship, and the PSAT is the test that puts you in the running for that, just because I know some of you that watch my channel are not American and therefore wouldn't necessarily know what the PSAT is. I don't know if they have that in other countries or not. So I remember taking the PSAT, and I did really well on the reading section, and the only thing that they like recommended, they basically give you recommendations of areas to focus on based off of what you answered right and wrong on the test. They were like, this was good, but you could really benefit from reading some more nonfiction. And me, being the smartass 16-year-old that I was like, well, fine, if you think that my like reading isn't good enough for you, I'm gonna read all this nonfiction and prove you wrong. And I actually got into reading nonfiction totally out of spite, because of a test that, because I missed a question, told me it would be good for me to read nonfiction. So I guess that was a good thing, because I really ended up liking nonfiction a lot. I liked a lot of the books that I read because of that. And so thanks, I guess, past self, for being kind of a butt. Okay. Number 13, I got into fan fiction, both the reading and the writing of it, because of the American Girl books, which are a series of historical fiction books about American girls throughout history that get paired with these dolls that have a ton of historical costumes. It's this whole thing. You can look it up if you're not familiar with what that is. But I got into writing fan fiction because of the Felicity books, which took place during the American Revolution era, and from there, my entire like worldview busted open to the wide, wonderful world of fan fiction. And no, none of that is posted online where you can go find it, so don't try. You will not find anything. I also got into fandom through Harry Potter, like fandom more broadly. Harry Potter is a series that I have a lot of complicated feelings about, but I will say that one of the things that I think it does best is bring people together in a shared community. And that was my introduction to the entire concept of fandom and becoming a fan of something, leading to friendships that I still have, years later to this day. Okay. Oh yeah, so I may have mentioned this one in my bookish pet peeves tag. If I did do that, I don't know. Probably it was a guilty reader or something like that. But I can't stand it when my book covers don't match. Like, if I have gone through the trouble to actually purchase books in a series, I want them to be either all paperback or all hardcover. None of this higgledy-piggledy, some are hardcover, some are paperback, and I want the covers to all be the same style. The one exception that I have to this is my set of the Chronicles of Narnia, which I was given by my grandfather when I was like 6 or 7 years old. He gave me The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in hard copy and the rest of the series in paperback. And no matter what happens, I'm never replacing that hardcover with a paperback or vice versa, because that was a gift and he wrote little messages in them for me, and that's never getting replaced. But as someone that then, as an adult, has gone out and like spent my own money on trying to build a library and, collect series that I enjoy, I cannot stand it when the book covers don't match. Ugh, okay, rant over. Okay, Number 16, my favorite living author is Patrick Rothfuss. I got to meet him at Emerald City Comic Con this year, and I was very proud of myself for not completely fangirling, but also, like, I felt a lot of regret afterwards because I was like, I didn't get to say a lot of the things that I wanted to say, and I was just like, oh, I really like your writing. I could live inside it. Okay, number 17, authors that I wish that I could meet. Two of these would require a feat of time travel mixed with necromancy, because those top two are Ursula K. Le Guin and Jane Austen, who have both sadly passed away, R.I.P. Although maybe if I did meet Jane Austen, I wouldn't want her to know it was me, because I would be afraid of her, like, satirizing me with her caustic wit. And yeah, maybe I would like that, actually. Maybe it would be kind of cool to get burned by Jane Austen. I don't really know. And as for living authors, the top ones I would like to meet are Roxane Gay, Nnedi Okorafor, N.K. Jemisin, and Tamora Pierce. Okay, this year, I have discovered a newfound love of memoir and short story collections, both of which were genres that, like, I had read before. It wasn't like I was unfamiliar with them, but yeah, I just really am on a kick of reading excellent memoirs and short story collections this year, and I've come to appreciate them as, like, art forms in and of themselves within the greater fiction umbrella. Okay, number 19. When I was in kindergarten, I stole a copy of The Diary of Anne Frank from my school library because for some reason, I have no idea why, 6-year-old me really wanted to read The Diary of Anne Frank, and my school librarian was like, oh, you should probably wait a few years for that. Let's go get you something a little more suitable for your age. So after the class left the library, I snuck back in and got the copy out of it, read the whole thing, did not really understand a word of it, but yeah, I guess that'll show them to keep me away from books that I want to read, haha. Okay, number 20, my favorite beverage to go with a book is tea, although I will also accept a pint of beer or a glass of wine. Number 21, I read books in the bathtub all the time, but I have never, knock on wood, dropped one book in the bathtub. Number 22, when I turned 18, all I wanted for my birthday was for my parents to take me to Champlain Book Mine. I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. I went. It's basically Narnia, and I will forever be sad that I had to leave that behind when I moved away from my hometown. Number 23, when I was in college, I threw a copy of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire across the room in frustration. I was reading it for a class, and I get really annoyed by the way J.K. Rowling tries and ultimately clumsily handles the discussions of race, segregation, and slavery that she brings up, particularly with the house elves, but also through some other BS that happens. And yeah, I just got really angry and I threw the book. Only book I've ever thrown to this day. Number 24, I love reading old poetry. This goes anywhere from, like, the ancient classical poets all the way up through, God, the most, like, recent contemporary poet that I really, really like is from the 1950s. That isn't me trying to be, like, all hipster or anything like that. I just really like meter and verse, and that is conspicuously absent from a lot of modern poetry, at least the modern poetry that I am aware of. We could go on a whole tangent about how, like, music and rap and things like that are really, like, the modern poetry and not what's being published in poetry books, but that's a question video topic for another time. And then the final reading fact about me is that my reading languages are English and then Spanish and Latin with a dictionary. I don't know, because a lot of, like, BookTube is very English-speaking centric, at least as far as I'm aware. I know a couple of booktubers that read and vlog, I guess, in languages other than English, but because I'm not very comfortable speaking any of those languages, there is kind of a disconnect, I think, between, like, languages and cultures and what types of things we get to read in translation on BookTube. So I think it's interesting to, like, share, if you are a booktuber that reads books in languages other than English, please leave a comment down below, because I'd be really interested to know. It can be anything. It can be like, I can read the Harry Potter books in this language. You don't need to be reading like the great works of classic literature in that language proficiently. I'm just curious to see like how many of you are out there that read books on BookTube in languages other than English. Also, I don't know how many of you will be seeing this, since on the internet we kind of have to self-select for the languages that we understand speaking, and you know, community translations can only go so far. So anyway, that's about gonna wrap up the 25 Bookish Facts About Me tag. I hope that you all really enjoyed watching this video. Please leave a comment down below if you had any thoughts on Bookish Facts About Me. Maybe you also have read books in the bathtub but have not been as lucky as I. Sorry. Yeah, so, right, I'm gonna go now. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.